Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Best Books Ever. I am Tyler, and today is exciting for many reasons, right? Obviously, another episode, right? More of this book. Good stuff here. But we are more so finishing this. This is the end. Last of it. In many ways, maybe the end ever. Seeming that, if you didn't know, we are waiting on the third book. We've been waiting, was it been like 10 years for him to finish the series for Doors of Stone? Um, I'm optimistic that we will get it, hopefully sooner rather than later, but we'll see. Um, we do have more stuff after this though with this series. We'll talk about that at the end though. But anyway, this is the end. This is the end of it. A lot of stuff happened in this section, and you can definitely see how there's a lot of threads. I think again we'll talk more about the more like predictions and what the end means for the hopeful third and final book in the trilogy. Um, but yeah, it was a good time. Um, so we'll start at the end, which the end is interesting because there's a lot to talk about with Kote, him, Bast Chronicler, all that stuff. The very, very end, well, I mean, we do see Kvothe a little bit, and I don't know exactly what he was doing. I feel like he started to like practice the katan at the end because he was like raising his hands and he like took a very deliberate step. So it felt like to me he was about to get into the katan. Um, could very well be a reach, but that's just kind of what I was thinking. But the more important thing I wanted to get into was the Bast stuff. We see at the end, Bast does approach the two soldiers, the two that got into a fight and stole from Kvothe. And we glean that it seems that Bast is the one who set this all up. He gets very angry at them at the end, says that he didn't get what he wants. And it seems that maybe at the end he killed the soldiers. It doesn't actually show that to us, but it does very well feel that way because he's very unhinged at the end. You can tell that whatever he wanted to happen with the two soldiers and Kvothe did not happen. My speculation, and at this point, this is like a fun part because whenever we finish a series, which we've done twice, well now this will be the third time. Whenever we finish a series, it's like, okay, cool. Now we can kind of look at the whole thing in retrospect. We also don't have to worry about spoilers because there are literally no spoilers for this. Like we don't know anything that's gonna happen, so it kind of opens it up a little bit. Because obviously I've read these before, and maybe some of you have as well. But for those of you who didn't, we always try to keep it spoiler free going forward. But now it's wide open. There are no spoilers. There are no spoilers to give. So what you can kind of glean from this, and what I've seen some speculation on, is it's pretty simple. It doesn't feel like there's anything super sinister going on with Bast. I think the most popular theory is that just he wants Reshi to be Kvothe again. We've kind of seen that over and over again with his conversations with Chronicler. We don't exactly know why, like if there is something higher there, um, or if it is just he really admires Kvothe and the stories he's heard about him, and now he's with him, and he maybe sort of saw glimmers of that when they first met, but now he's a shell of the Kvothe that he knew. So he just wants to get him back there, and maybe there is something for the like uh, bigger world or whatever, because we keep mentioning stuff that, I think the like present time stuff kind of gets glossed over because we're more invested in the other 95% of the story, which is Quill's story and him with, Denna and Will and Sim, the university and the Chandrian and all that stuff. We sort of gloss over the present day stuff, and they keep mentioning about how like this war. Obviously, we look at the name of the series, King Killer. It's like is this war? Is the state of the world seems to be burning and crumbling around them? We've gotten some hints and then some more like direct information of that. Was this all started because of Kvothe? And then obviously in the last part, we talk about him talking to the tree and how it is just like he's now carrying like a plague, very similar to how rats carried the plague through the fleas in real life. That was the whole like was it bubonic plague, right? The rats didn't have the plague themselves, they were a vessel. So now we're looking at that as like every time someone talks to the tree, that happens. And Quoth being even, more important than the regular person, very similar to all the other very powerful people who've talked to the tree. Is this all his fault? We don't know. We simply don't know. We can only speculate. um, but then again, boiled down to where this started with Bast, he did it. I mean, we assume his plan was like, okay, we're gonna get him into a physical altercation, and he's finally gonna break out of it, and he's gonna demolish these guys. Probably not kill them, but just demolish them with maybe his physical prowess. Obviously, he studied, uh, trying to get them reds right, or maybe he will use some sort of sympathy or something. But no, it doesn't happen. He gets hurt. And again, that really hits for us because of the epilogue, kind of the prologue and the epilogue, but the epilogue always ending with a man waiting to die. Um, Even after all of this, we get that little glimpse into Kvothe, and this whole idea that Bast, luring chronicler here, being able to tell Kvothe's story can maybe get him back into who he was before. Um, and the epilogue always, I think, takes the wind out of our sails of like, there is no change. Like, we're hoping for a change and to be like, oh, someone who sort of, you know, the little twinkle in his eye is starting to return. Nah, a man still waiting to die. Um, now that we can finally talk about it, I mean, it is like, I think I mentioned it a couple of times before, but we so desperately want to know, how did Kvothe get from where he is right now in the story, right? So the last thing we saw was him partying with his friends and stuff, right? Like Thrap and all those guys, Wilson, Fela, all that. To where he is now, a depressed, borderline suicidal innkeeper, who used to be this man of legend. This man that um, uh, got up into the ranks with the likes of Taberlin the Great. How did he get here? Um, but I do kind of want to keep some stuff for the end for us to talk about, like future stuff, because there are some very interesting things that I think are hinted at in this story, and then even stuff that Kote says that makes Doors of Stone. I'm optimistic Pat will release it and we can see how the story ends. But there's some stuff where it's like, even okay, this is the only thing I'll say before I move on. But Quoth talking about the tree with Bast, with Bast outburst, and he was like, oh, only bad stuff and whatever comes from this or whatever. And Quoth was like, trust me, Bast, I know what story I'm telling. This is not a comedy. Him saying that this is a tragedy, right? And it's like, I'm so interested to see how this story ends, because I mean, obviously, just to finish a story is very satisfying, but most stories you consume have, well, I don't want to say that, but like, usually there is a sense of like completion, and not just because you turned the last page on a book. There is like everything wrapped up into a bow. Sometimes it's very happy and it's like, oh, we won. Um, but there's always a sense of like, it's done. With this, it's like, the story, like, where does the story end? Like, you can't tell me he gets all the way up until where he is right now. It's like, oh, and then I bought an inn. you know so it's like, this is a tragedy, and then your mind starts spiraling of like, what parts of his life so far has he introduced to us that are going to turn tragic, right? But yeah, anyway, that's some future stuff that we just don't know. Aside from that, a little bit at the end too, we do have, thought I messed something up. We do have Kvothe attempting to open his chest. He does fish out a couple of keys to unlock two of the locks. But the one lock still isn't budging, but doesn't really have a key maybe, or he lost the key. We're not 100% sure. But he also doesn't seem super surprised that he's not able to unlock it. So then that's where questions start spiraling as well. I've seen some theories about this as well that I don't remember, but it's just the idea of like, why can't he open the chest? Has he forgotten how to open the chest? Did something happen that caused him to lose those memories? Did he do it to himself? Like, obviously, the biggest question: what is in the chest, right? Have we already encountered the thing that's in the chest in these two books? So a lot of stuff to think about there as well. But getting into the actual story, let's see, where do we start? I think we'll probably end on the dentist stuff because I like ending on the dentist stuff. So we'll wrap up very quickly the Edema stuff. Not too much to say here. I'll say the one very, very important thing I wanted to mention was Shane. It's very weird that I say it out loud. It's not Shane is like just like a super it's like a super common name. It's probably not how you pronounce it. But Shihine probably is closer to how it's pronounced. The like leader of the school at the Edem place. She does tell a very, very short, but I think important story about the Seven or the Chandrian. Again, very, very short, almost no concrete details. Most of it, she's like, but it was forgotten, or the thing crumbled, or was lost, or whatever. But I think the most important thing to come of that story is, one, there is a new story about the Seven. I think that just adds to its validity, right? I also like that she told a story and it seems to have, it does seem to have weight. She's not telling it as a fairy tale, right? I think that's one of, if not the biggest hurdle that Kvothe has had when trying to study the Chandrian, is that most people see it as a fairy tale, and is a thing where it's like, if there are stories of Chandrian in a couple towns over, people would dismiss it and be like, "Oh, that's nonsense." But they wouldn't go in that town because why? Why would I do that? Why would I risk it? Which again is sort of like, I don't know, like false logic to be like, well, if you don't believe, like putting it more like a real world scenario, like if you heard that there was like a bear that was going out of its mind, just like attacking people with, I don't know, you're just like some like vicious rabid bear or something, two towns over, you might be like, no way. Like a bear is killed, like a bear's killed a dozen people already. There's no way. There's no way, right? But you wouldn't go in that town, because it'd be like, so with this, it's like you have to at least a little bit admit to yourself that you believe the Chandrian could exist for you to be afraid of them, right? Just like I would totally believe that could happen. I would say it's unlikely that a bear is killing so many people a couple towns over, in a suburban setting, but wouldn't go. So the same thing here, right? Where that's why Kvothe is caught in a very tough spot because he saw them, right? Like it happened. So for Shihine to tell a story like this, it's like, okay, that's the validity of it, the seriousness of it. Breadcrumbs, all that stuff. There are even like 7 names mentioned, as well as 7 signs mentioned. Um, the whole signs thing adds to the confusion of like, whoa, there's some people say this happens and some people say that happens, you know? So that's good, I guess, that it's mentioned at the very least. Again, it doesn't really help him in the sense of like, ooh, I'm one step closer to finding them. Um, but I do think at the very least it just fills him with a little bit of hope of like, there is hope out there for me to find information on them. I just have to travel, you know, like, I forget, oh, I forget who said it. Was it, was it Shihan that said it, or was it somebody else that was like, it might, I don't remember exactly. Um, but they were just like, you have to travel to like the ends of the map to find someone that would even maybe believe that the Chandra were real and not just laugh you off as like a like dumb kid, right? You know, so I think that's his problem, is that he's at the university, which is a very logical step to learn about anything. But that one would be the first step that the Chandrian would take to remove information from, like obviously remove it from the university, right? But then also those are they're scholars, right? Like they're, unless someone had a very eerily similar event happen to them, nobody there is going to be like, oh yes, the Chandrian, let me help you, right? You know, like even the first time that Kvothe mentioned it, they sort of looked at him sideways, and I was like, oh, and then you know, Will or Sim, I forget which one, kind of came to his defense and was kind of like, oh no, it's just like fairy tales, you know, it's just like a fun thing to sort of study, and and then they were like, oh okay, yeah, I kind of get that, but to Kvothe, it's like, nah, this is real, this is real life. Um, so anyway, yeah, I think that's probably what we'll see in the third book. Again, I don't know. I kind of want to leave like all third book predictions to the end. Um, but like we gotta see. Like, are we not gonna see the Chandrian at all in the third book? That'd be crazy. How does the series end and does not see the Chandrian in real life? Although we did see him, one of them in the bandit camp, but you know what I mean. Um, what else do we have? I don't even know what I was just looking at. Oh yeah, the Shihan stuff. Um, let's see. I guess now we're just kind of going in order, huh? I really like the whole Kieran and Ellie stuff. This immediately reminded me of Quill's thoughts when he was in Trebin and saved those people from the Dracus, right? He did all that way uh, more than enough to make someone feel like a hero, like a real life hero who deserves to have stories told about him. But then he to himself said that the thing that made him feel most like a hero and gave him the most satisfaction was helping that girl. I think her name was Nina. I think was her name. Um, was helping that little girl, giving her the quote unquote, like charm, right? Helping her sleep at night and all that stuff, right? Like that made him feel good, and I think it was because it was real. Like he could tangibly see people getting saved. Like sure, you can be like, oh, he killed the Dracus. Dracus would have hurt people. I don't think he takes anything away from that, but I think it is those like little moments, because stories are always told about the big moments and they get exaggerated and twisted and romanticized and all that stuff. But these small moments that no one will ever talk about. I mean, Nina might talk about it here and there, but you're never gonna get songs about this stuff. You know, it's just not gonna happen, right? Like you'll get songs about. I mean, even later we talk about, um, the stuff he did with the Felurian, or even the Bandit stuff. Like those are events that could get songs, could get, could stand the test of time. But then you have moments like this, and then you go to the Kieran and Ellie stuff, and it's like probably not going to last very long, especially outside of that town. But that is a moment where I think Quoth can truly feel like he helped people, He helped just the regular people. No one really needs. I mean, again, the stories that he was afraid getting out from that wasn't that he helped two girls. It was that he killed 9 people, and he didn't want to get brought up. He didn't want to get brought up on the iron law again. Probably wouldn't have been a good look for him. The university, all that stuff. Like, he's actually on break from the university at that point because of getting brought up in the iron law, getting found innocent of everything, of course, but twice isn't going to look good, even if he gets innocent again. Yeah, which I think would be harder. you know. But yeah, like this whole stuff, and like how they kind of warmed up to him, how he was very smart in his way of getting Ellie out of her shell, just like continuously talking and like sort of acting like nothing was wrong. Like, you are a part of it, you are here, you are present. I think that was very smart by him. And then him even like being sort of humble, but in a way that he definitely thought about it beforehand. He very calculating in it, but going to turn himself in. Him talking with Grant, I thought was really cool. I really liked the moment where they were still kind of on their way back, and he was struggling to sleep. I don't think this was his first night, but struggling to sleep, having like nightmares and stuff about killing people, getting cold blood, and then they turned into like his own Edema Ruh family. He's like killing his family. Again, even though it's not true, those people weren't actual Edema Ruh. They weren't even troopers. They were just bandits who, flew false flags. But it was hard to get out of his head, even killing people like that. Like, in his mind, most people, normal people, wouldn't jump to that. They would have found a different way. So he thinks there's something wrong with him. And in that moment, he felt like a presence next to him, and he looked over and he saw Ellie clutching onto him, right? In his sleep, she was crying, she was like mumbling and stuff, clutching so hard that, I think she was like scratching his arms and like drawing a little bit of blood. And, him just kind of reassuring her, and then you can visibly see all the tension go away from her, and she's still like asleep in all this. And then that's when he was finally able to relax, and he said that I didn't have any nightmares after that. And I think that moment is very powerful because we've talked about this before, where Kvothe has a tendency to his own mind and his own like cleverness and intellect, and just him thinking about things can be a slippery slope, both in good ways and bad ways, right? Like, we've seen it obviously work to his advantage, but I think it's worked to his disadvantage as well. So something like this, where he just, like domino effect of like, I killed those people, I left them, like, I left the one a water skin so that he could drink it, but in actuality it was just because I knew it would make him live longer and suffer more. Those guys were Edema Ruh, even though they weren't, but they kind of were. And would we have, should I have actually killed them? Should I have killed them like that? All this stuff swirling around in his head and just breaking him down further and further. And then it took this girl to just do something very simple, just to kind of embrace him, and then him to make her feel better, to be like, oh no, this is what it was for. Those people were evil. I killed evil people, not just desperate, because there are other things you can do to be desperate. I would know. I lived in Tarbean for however long he did. I forget. It was like a couple years, I think, something like that, right? What they did was evil, and I took them out. Again, he, I think he still struggles with a little bit, but the majority of it was able to flush. So, really enjoyed that moment. Let's see. Okay, so we have all the mayor stuff, right? We finally get back to the mayor. One of the positive things that happened was we do learn that the mayor also had an interest in the Emir, which was very cool. Obviously, this doesn't go anywhere because we know what happens with his relationship with the mayor, but I thought that was nice. Again, him having an actual interest in it and researching it in a very similar way that Kvothe did. Because again, it seems to be easier for him to study the Ymir than the Chandrian, right? The Chandrian is a fairy tale. The Ymir, people don't think that they didn't exist, you know? But it's still very difficult because what Kvothe is trying to search for, people just kind of dismiss it, right? Again, not because it's a fairy tale, but just because it's like, it was a while ago, we all kind of know it was the church, blah, 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 whatever, right? But the mayor talks about how he has researched it and how he has kind of come to the same questions that Kvothe has of like, where are they? Not how did they end, not were they killed, where are they? Present tense. He believes that there's still some sort of presence of the Ymir, which again I think is another thing that doesn't give him a lot of information. Very similar to Shihan telling the story, doesn't really give him information, but it does give him hope that there are people out there and there are edges of the world that he can go to find his information. At a base level, I think things like this just help him believe that he's not crazy and help him believe that this is not a fruitless search. Along with the mayor stuff, unfortunately, he does have to admit that he is Edema Ruh for him to explain himself as to why he knew they weren't. And, he could have just let it go, I think. Although maybe the decision of giving him amnesty from stuff may not have come the same way. So we're not 100% sure there, but I find it interesting that the whole Edema Ruh thing, like him being the Ruh, keeps coming up over and over and over again. We literally just talked about bandits who tried to impersonate the Ruh, and now we have this happening as well, which is another side effect with Melwan not liking them and not liking them is a severe understatement. Despises them to her core would probably be more accurate. He says it and he has to leave and everything. That's tough. I do like Kvothe's unintentional mission that he's taken up in piece by piece, person by person. He is convincing them that the Edema Ruh are not like those terrible stories that you hear of them being taking advantage of people, robbing people, right? All the stuff that those bandits did. It's like, no, the Ruh don't do that. But it was easy to get away with it because that's what people believe. I mean, if you remember, he even had a conversation with Will and Sim, and they were kind of walking on eggshells around it, but they did have questions. And Kvothe initially got upset at them, but then he was like, it makes sense that they believe this because how they were told. So then he started to tell them of like who the Ruh really are. So again, I like that is who Kvothe is. Keeps showing up in his story. It just shows that this is important, right? Him being the Ruh is important. At the end of the day, when he counts his chickens, he's like, all in all, not bad. It sucks. The mayor's not my patron, as I would have hoped, and obviously there was another timeline where I would have stayed here and just been under him and probably got some land and a title and all this other stuff. But where he's at right now, not bad. I mean, he gave him a full pardon for the murders, even if from a certain perspective he was totally justified in doing it. It seems that the mayor will just continuously pay his tuition, no matter how high, so that's awesome. Doesn't have to worry about money for tuition. For other things, sure, but he was even able to finagle his way into getting money with the bursar depending on how much his tuition was. So now he kind of wants his tuition to be high, just a little bit. And then what was the other thing? Oh yeah, and then he got a writ to perform anywhere, right? That's an interesting one to me because the first two are very obvious, right? Like you get amnesty from your crime, cool. You get money for tuition, cool. The writ is like, when will that come into play? Will we ever see that again? Book two is over. This is the end. So in Doors of Stone, are we gonna see him like in a situation where he needs to like perform somewhere as an Edema Ruh, and he needs to have the writ to do so? Like that's interesting. Again, I don't think that Pat would write that in of just like, it's just like another thing he was given. Like, I feel like there has to be foreshadowing to things like that. So that was interesting. And then other than that, like, Cole was kind of thinking to himself about how this trip was worth it. It absolutely was worth it. Again, he didn't get the patronage that he wanted and whatever, right? But other than that, he would have never got the whole Felorian stuff, which obviously at a surface level was very nice. But him learning more about the Fae, him seeing the tree, which I guess, in the grand scheme of things, maybe that was a bad thing. But he did get information out of the tree about Denna and about the Chandrian, or the Emir, whatever. Florian stuff was cool, obviously. The Fae, again, more information about that, about like the war and like the state of things. He would have never been able to see the Edem and learn from them, which is invaluable in itself. He would have never run across the bandit leader who was one of the Chandrian. Again, that was just another little piece that happened there to be like, oh, I'm still in this, like, it is not impossible for me to find these people again. What am I going to do? I don't know yet. Haven't figured that out. But it's not like I saw them that one time when they killed my family and I'm never going to see them again. Because it happened twice now. Again, you take with the good with the bad. Obviously, the whole seeing the tree thing was bad. The mostly the dentist stuff was good, but then the dentist stuff got bad at the end. But I think overall it's a positive. And also, Stapes, because Kote was returning all of his rings because he's kind of out of favor with the mayor, so now no one sees a reason, an advantageous reason to have any connection to Kvothe. Stapes encourages him to keep the bone ring that he gave Kvothe, which we were told that's like he's in close debt, right? And he's like, no, this goes outside of my servitude to the mayor. Like, this is between men. You keep this. So again, talking about foreshadowing, will Stapes come into this at some point? Stapes, while he's not the mayor, like, he is pretty old. Him being the like right-hand man to the mayor, more powerful than it seems. He might know a lot of things too, even when they were talking, the mayor sort of referred to him as like an old soul, very, very traditional, that sort of thing. So maybe, again, I feel like it wouldn't be there if it didn't hold some importance in the future. So that was really cool. Yeah, we're getting to the dentist stuff. Oh, jeez. Devi stuff. I was very excited for Kvothe to get back to Devi. To obviously get his stuff back, get the ring back now that, and then begin his fruitless search to find Denna, although he does find her, which is good. But I love their initial interaction when they first saw each other again, right? He goes there, knocks on the door, she opens it, and I think he sort of makes a quip, and she doesn't have any reaction. She's like, still's a statue, right? Just sort of looking at him. And he's like, oh, what? No banter? And she's like, oh, I don't do business on the stairs or whatever. And I just love it because not only in her vocal language, but her body language as well, she's very, again, very stiff, very still, and you can't quite gauge like what's going on here, like why is she acting like she's surprised, but maybe she's a little cold as well, like we're not. And then you realize that she's trying to hold it together. She, like everyone else, was led to believe that Kvothe had died when the ship wrecked, before he even got to Savron and the mare. And you realize that Devi really does care for Kvothe. Again, I've mentioned this before. I don't think Devi wants to like date Kvothe or anything like that, but I do think that they both enjoy each other's company very much, more so than just a business relationship. So I think that hit her in a very similar way to how it would have hit everyone else that he knew, right? Or at least people that were close to him, Will, Sim, Fela, all that stuff. Um, so she was just in shock of like, oh my God, you're alive. I can't believe it. Like she probably grieved for him the same way that like Will and Sim, I'm sure, did, and Fela and all the, um, so yeah, I just really like that because again, it's along with him coming back to the university, knocking on Sim's door, Sim groggily opening the door, and then within a half a second, he embraces Quoth in a bone crushing hug, and says, "Oh my God, you're alive." It's those little things, like even when Quoth was talking about it or whatever, he was thinking about it. He's never really had a home to go back to. Like, even when he had a home, it was with the Edema Ruh and his parents and stuff, and that wasn't a place, it was a people. So he's never really had like a place, a hero goes on an adventure, they slay the demon king or whatever, and they come back home to familiarity, to family, to friends, to their room, a nice hot meal. Like, he's never had that to come back to because it's never been a thing, right? Like, again, when he had a home, it was a people, it wasn't actually a location. And then beyond that, he never had a place beyond, the like place on the roofs where like the three roofs met. Again, so for him to come back and for him to immediately be embraced by these people that are, I mean, one, happy that he's alive, but two, just happy to see him, like want to spend time with him and genuinely love him, is something he's not used to in the slightest. So I think that is, um, you know, that's just shown with everyone he knows, right? So that was great. That was really cool. And then on top of that, once we get past all the emotions, we do go to Devi, and Kvothe has a sudden realization that Devi's work, her business, is not actually in money; it's in favors. She is not the typical money lender that you may find. She is, honestly, way worse, like way more predatory than other ones are. Like, she's not in the business of, because like more harsh money lenders would want you to default on your loan so that they could, uh, they could gouge you for money or they could extort you or whatever, right? Like, Devi's plan is a little more devious, where it's like, I do want you to go back, for you to be able to pay your loans, but not to like blackmail you necessarily. It's more so like, I want you to owe me a favor. I want, um, yeah, which I guess is sort of similar, but that's more so what she cares about. Like, she does not care about the money. Again, he's like looking around her room and it's like, hold on a second, this is luxurious. you know, like the furniture, the books, the clothes you're wearing, like, this is kind of crazy actually. And then, he's even like, you don't have a minimum loan amount, do you? You just wanted me to not be able to pay you back. And then she's like, thanks for playing the game. And I love that. Because seemingly he's probably not going to have to go back to her for money anymore because you have to worry about tuition and anything else. It's like, well, actually, the higher the tuition, the more money he gets. Plus, his schemas for the bloodless are going well, and he's trying to develop more and all this stuff. So money is not really an issue for him anymore. He's not rich um, as like Will or Sim who come from noble blood, but he probably wants to go back to Devi again. Although this does open up some nice opportunities for him to go to Devi, more so just for company. For kind of building that again. Devi still really wants access to the archives. Will that happen in Doors of Stone? We don't know. Some more stuff. We got Eladin. Him talking to Eladin, which I was very excited about. I think last part, right? Part before. Where it's like, dude, he called the wind. Like, I can't wait for him to talk to Eladin about this, I'm sure Eladin will be very excited, and he is. As we see more and more, we do train more and more, and he's able to call the wind more frequently, which is really cool. Again, how will that play into the next book? He really is becoming a true arcanist, and not only a true arcanist, but one of the rare ones. Learning things that even most arcanists don't really get a full grasp of. But I do like something that they talked about when he mentioned him calling the wind with the Felurian. Eladin mentioned that you probably actually called the name of the Felurian herself. At first, you're like, that's ridiculous. But then, it's like, wind, something that powerful, that ancient, there's no way that you could have almost killed her with just knowing the name of the wind. There's no way. Like, you had to have known her actual name. Which is interesting. I guess just the sleeping mind knew that. But then he was even like, oh, you're very, you have complete knowledge of it. And like, I know they were getting intimate. But even when he did that, that was kind of early, wasn't it? When he did that. So that's still surprising. But again, like, I think that's great because it just shows his sleeping mind's knack for names. Like, he might actually turn out to be a real master namer. And I'm sure that's why Eladin is very excited to like take him under private tutelage. They'd be like, dude, this guy might actually have it. And he's already talked to Kvothe before, back when, a little earlier on, when he was like, names used to be like the thing. And now it's sort of like, it's not really it's not as a popular thing anymore. It is more so looked at as like ancient magic. So I'm sure he's very excited to have someone seemingly this adept at naming. Yeah. And then I think the rest of the stuff is Dennis stuff. So we will get into that, because Dennis stuff is always interesting. So let's see, where do we start? I like this realization that Kote and Dennis have, because obviously, listen, there's so many nice moments between Kote and Dennis. I can't talk about them all. There's very nice stuff, right? Like them in the river was very nice, right? I enjoyed that. That was cool. But I liked the moments, the like realization when Kvothe was, they were having a great time. They were in the midst of some very blissful moments, and it seems that all the tension finally faded away from them kind of getting back into the swing of things, and also some things that they might know and not really want to approach, especially the whole Severance stuff. Kvothe thought, okay, this is the perfect moment. I'm gonna, hopefully very careful and fragile way, I'm gonna bring up Patron beating her. I can very clearly see bruises, welts on you, like and first of all, I think that's a terrible idea. Like, even the tree was like, you could try, but Denna's not gonna bring then she is not going to talk to you about this, and she's not going to leave her patron. You could ask her, you could beg her, and she's not going to do it. So I think it's kind of foolish for him to be like, I'm going to bring it up to her and I'm going to coax her out of it. Like, no, that's not going to work. I personally believe there's no way. But I like that Dennis sort of interrupts his thoughts and is like, oh, you have scars and, where those come from. And, he talks about, oh, the university, I got in trouble, so they whipped me and whatever, right? And in that moment, he realizes that is very similar to Denna's situation. I don't think it's the same. I think it'd be a stretch to say it's the same thing. They're in the same. I don't know. But it is similar, because in his mind, it's like, okay, university, I've gotten whipped, I've gotten physically hurt for this, but I don't leave. I would never leave. I would never stop going to the university. That's crazy. I have things to gain. But then you look at Denna's situation, it's like, how is that super different? Like, she gets beaten by her patron, but she wouldn't leave. There's money and there's connections there. I need that to further what I'm trying to do with my life. Now, again, I don't think it's the exact same, because one is done maliciously and one is done because it's just how it is, You know what I mean? A little different there, but I understand the sentiment is the same. Like that at a very base level, I get physically hurt, but I don't leave the thing that physically hurts me because I have something to gain from the thing. That is the same. So I get it. It's very tough in that, in that regard, for him to kind of bring it up to her and be like, you should stop this, and it's like, really? You should stop this? You just told me that you get whipped. Like, that's not, bad argument there. So, I did like that. Again, more so just because I don't want him to bring that up to, like, I don't, like, you guys just got back together. Please wait a while before you bring that. I mean, it's tough because every day that he doesn't bring it up, and in his mind, every day that he doesn't save her from her patron, she gets another bruise. She gets another welt, She has another slight limp in her walk for a few days. Like, the tree mentioning that, like, she's on the ground with a mouthful of blood. It's like, ooh, gonna kill him. Gonna end him. So, I think that's very tough. And again, I don't know. I'm not gonna mention it right now. We'll talk about it at the end. We'll talk about, like, all the open threads that I feel like this book has, and how I feel like it's gonna be tough, but very doable for Pat to do it. And I think that is one of the sources of, I'm assuming that is one of the sources of his anxiety when it comes to trying to release this book in a way that he's happy with. But yeah, anyway, more Denna stuff. Again, kind of walking on thin ice a little bit here. Denna does mention his cavorting with other women. Just kind of brings it up very slightly. Again, she tells she's irritated by it. Because again, we know, we can see that these two clearly love each other, even if they're not able to admit it to each other. We know this. So of course there being rumors. Again, women talk, as per Fela, and she's like, "Oh, man, you're apparently trying to." Well, I forget exactly what it was, but like half you're trying to decimate the female population or something. And Cole tries to, like, joke his way out of it, but you can tell that Denna is, I'm not joking. So there's a little bit of bitterness there, and we'll get into why in a second. But the last bullet point I have to kind of round that out is Fela, again, saying that women talk and whatever, and, we know that Kvothe has been, now there is sort of a confirmation that Kvothe has been with quite a few women, albeit it does seem that they are chasing him, not the other way around. She says that you are distant, that you would if I were to date you, you would care for me, you would do everything right, but I would know at the end of the day you're not devoted to me and you would leave me for something more important. And they talk about Denna, and Sim is like, oh, but Denna, I mean, you can clearly tell that he would turn over the earth for her, or whatever. And they get into love, and Colt is like, oh, I never said love, you know. And then Sim is like, you know what, Fela, you're right. Love is blind. I will never doubt you again. Because he's like, he's saying that because he's like, you love her. What are you talking about? You love her and she loves you. You guys are both fools. I'm trying to round that out. Like, in that moment, you realize, oh, Kvothe and Den are the same person. Another example of how they're the same person, because we know that that's what Denna does as well, where she gets with these guys, hangs out with them for a little bit, but after a while, every guy faces the same thing. She's not staying with you. There's more important things. She becomes distant, all that stuff. I think the difference is that with Kvothe and Denna, with each other, that's not the case. Um, it's not the case. But I do like that, and even the whole thing with Cole talking about Cole kind of arguing. It's like, oh, Denna's always with another guy. Suddenly I do it, and it's a problem. And Fela basically says that, well, it's a little different from what you've described. Denna hangs out with these guys. Uh, what I would say is that Denna does this out of survival, right? She hangs out with these guys. She genuinely gives them a good time, but eventually she can't stay where she's at. They try to ask for too much, and she leaves, right? Kvothe does a little more than just has lunch with these women, and so that's where I think the line is crossed. So that for that perspective, you could see how, again, Fela says women talk. We know these things. We tell each other things. So Denna undoubtedly has heard maybe more details than she would like to know about Cole's escapades. And so in her mind, she may have even thought the same thing. She may have even thought about how she hangs out with a bunch of dudes, but it's like, what I do is different. Kvothe is out here being a heathen, you know? So yeah. So it's tough, it's tough. At the end of the day, dude, book's over, right? Book's over. I just need these two to get together already, I'm very scared that is going to be one of the tragedies that happens, is that they don't end up getting together. Like something, I mean, clearly I feel like they're not on terrible terms at this point, because even Bast talked about how Bast met Denna at one point, but even that was, maybe that was a bad meeting. I don't know. I'm very scared for that aspect of everything else in Cole's story can go wrong, but if the Denna stuff goes wrong, that's gonna hit me pretty hard. But in terms of open threads, I mean, if you have followed along at all with Pat and stuff, and obviously this being behind the Game of Thrones stuff, the Song of Ice and Fire, the Kingkiller Chronicles, probably the second most famous unfinished fantasy series. And people are really hungry for it. There's obviously been a million theories going around about different things in the book. I obviously hope that his mental health improves for his own sake as a person. But then obviously, a little selfishly, I do want the third book. Putting that aside, a lot of threads to close up. We obviously have the Edem stuff. How will that play out? He has certain responsibilities. The Felurian stuff. Will she ever come back? Will we ever see her again? Obviously, she hopes that he will return. Bigger than that, though, the Fae, like we learn more and more about the war that causes. Is that going to play a part into it? Does that play a part into the current war that Kote, Bast Chronicler are surrounded by, right? With the tree, what happens with that? Do we see more bad stuff happen? The Emir and the Chandrian, it's like I can't imagine the last book ends and we don't confront any aspect of the Emir / Chandrian. Like that would be insane. obviously the Denna stuff hits me really hard, because I gravitate towards any sort of romance and stories, and so this one being one of my favorite fictional romances, um, you know, just because I love the little back and forth, the like dueling of words that they have with each other is very fun to watch. But it's like, how is it gonna end though? Is it gonna end with them being together? Are they gonna confess to each other? Um, that hurts, and obviously the like Denna's health and safety with her patron. Like, what happens there? I'm telling you, it doesn't matter how good of a day. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. If Kvothe sees Denna's patron, he's going to murder him on sight. Like there's no hesitation. There's no, oh, should I do this? None of that. Like you better hope Denna is with him when that happens, and Denna is able to like grip his shoulders and be like, don't do it. If you like, she better threaten him and be like, if you kill him, I will never talk to you again ever. And even that might not be enough, because even close knowledge that Denna is out of harm might be might be stronger in his mind than him never seeing her again, because he's like, hey, at least Denna's not going to be murdered by her patron. Um, Aside from that, we have like the real world stuff, obviously. The chest is a small mystery. I don't know how big that plays into the overall story. Um, Bast trying to get Reshi to turn into Kvothe again. Like, what's the end goal there? What does that look like? Just I guess the war that they're in, does that play a part into the story, or is that just set dressing? Um, um, yeah, I don't know. A ton of stuff, a ton of threads, and probably a dozen more that I just can't think of right now. But I think the most interesting part of this whole story and the way it's set up and everything is like, what story is Kvothe trying to tell? Because obviously we know that he skips over a bunch of stuff. This isn't just a straight up autobiography where it's a in-depth, nauseating tale of his life. It is a story that he's telling. He skips over parts he doesn't think are important to the story. Not necessarily that they aren't exciting or wouldn't be fun to hear, but there is a story that he's crafting, and only the parts that lend well to that are being told. I have seen theories about like this whole story is actually about Denna. It's very Denna centric. That's who he feels. That's what he feels is the most important thing in his life. And that kind of dictates his life. So this whole story is actually is actually revolving around Denna, which I think is interesting. It's not about how did Kvothe become a famous, powerful wizard who killed a king. That's actually not what it's about. I've seen some theories about that, which is interesting. I've seen some theories about who the king is. I've seen theories about Ambrose being the king. That's who he finally kills. 'Cause even that's another thread where it's like, where does this Ambrose Kvothe rivalry end? Does he become a king? Does Kvothe kill him? Does that possible? Um, I've seen theories about Denna, about how like Denna is like Fae or something. Because it is very strange that Denna always seems to show up where Kvothe is, no matter where he is. Found him on the side of the road when they met, found him at the university, at the Aeolian, at the mayor's place, in Tarbean randomly. Like, she always seems to be where he is. Is it just a huge coincidence? Is it just that their paths cross, or is there something sinister going on? I did see a very funny theory that, I don't think was serious, but it was like, Denna sounds like Denner. We know the whole like Denner resin thing. What if this whole thing is just a like a metaphor for Kvothe's addiction to the Denner resin thing? And I was like, okay, you need to. I think you need to like take a nap, because that is a ridiculous theory. But again, I thought that was fun. But yeah, and that's pretty much it. So I mentioned a lot of the, I guess that section, but also this book, this series. I mean, it's over. As of right now, we don't have that third book. I'm very hopeful, very optimistic. Like I said, I did start off a couple months ago when we started this of like, hey, this is unfinished, but I do think these two books are that good that they're still worth reading. And I feel like most fans feel that way as well, where like, oh, if I could take it back, I wouldn't have even started them. It's like, no, like these two books are so good and so well written and so like enthralling that I think you should read them even if the story's unfinished. Um, yeah. Let me know any predictions for Doors of Stone. Any of your favorite theories if you do kind of any sort of searching online, get any of those. Um, I definitely would like to. Maybe I just thought about that. Maybe at one point I will do like a bonus episode, where I've kind of compiled all of the more like popular fan theories about Doors of Stone. Maybe like make an episode and we kind of talk about them. I think that could be fun. I gotta write that down, and that might be fun to do. Um, because yeah, this is the first like unfinished series that we've done, and also a more popular one that's been unfinished for like a decade, and so there's a million theories. So maybe I'll do that at some point. Um, Next though, I say the series is finished, but not quite. There are two novellas that Pat has written that take place in the universe with characters that we know, and so I've actually never read them, but I would like to read them on here because I think they'd be fun. I think they have gotten generally positive reviews. They're not just some like throwaway stories. So I'm gonna read two of them. Because there is like a very short story or something, but it's like I'm not doing that. But um, so next week we're gonna do the entire story, because it's less than 200 pages, which is less than what we've been reading every week so far. So we can very if you've been able to keep up so far, um, easily be able to keep up with this. It is, what's the full name of it? The Slow Regard of Silent Things. Um, the Slow Regard of Silent Things. So that is the first of two novellas we will cover. We'll cover that next week. Yeah, so the entire thing. We're doing the whole thing. I don't know the chapters because it's not important because we're doing the whole thing. The whole book. The only thing I know, again, I haven't read it, so the only thing I know about this book, just from reading the synopsis, is that it is a story um, set at some point. I think it's set during the first book at some point, and it is from the perspective of Ari. That's all I know. I don't know anything that happens in it. I don't know. Again, all I know is that I'm pretty sure it's set during the first book at some point in the first book, and it is from Ari's perspective. That's all I know. So we will read that together. It'll be a fun little thing. And yeah, thank you for listening, watching, all that stuff. That is it. Until next time, read the entirety of The Slow Regard of Silent Things by Patrick Rothfuss, and keep our fingers crossed for Doors of Stone.